Hello Year 8. This brief revision podcast is there to help you in terms of revising the topic, in terms of people and the planet, for any upcoming tests that you might want to use this for. So the first lesson was more of an induction, but we did go over the fact that the Earth has 5 oceans and 7 continents. Obviously the equator going through the middle, and it's a sphere that rotates on its axes. We obviously go through day and night every day, and 24 hours is how long it takes the planet to spin round once, and we are orbiting the sun, and this orbit takes 1 year. That's why there are the seasons. We then looked at how our numbers are growing fast in the second lesson. The Earth is 4.6 billion years old, but people have only existed for about 200,000 years. We started to consider what humans need, so water, air, food, warmth, medicine. And then we looked at how the population has increased. So 10,000 years ago, the population of the entire world was 4 million. 3,000 years ago, it was 50 million. And then in the 1800s, the population exploded. So for the first time, it reached 1,000 million, or how we should phrase that is 1 billion. And then over the last 225 years at the time of recording, the population's gone from 1 billion to 8.3. So it's increased massively. One word you could use is exponentially, where it increased slowly for 200,000 years, or 4.6 billion years really, and then exploded about 200 years ago due to the Industrial Revolution, obviously healthcare improving, and people having more children. The population went up by a considerable margin, and that was the point of that whole lesson. We then looked, in our next part of that lesson, we then started to consider a bit about, how the people and where the people live. So we looked at population distribution and how they are spread across the planet. We looked at population density, i.e. how many people are there in a certain area, usually how many people are there per square kilometre. Some places like Antarctica are empty and people only visit there. Some parts like Australian outback are very lightly populated or sparsely populated, whereas some areas like Mexico City are very, very crowded. This is otherwise known as densely populated. And across the planet, people live unevenly. There are some areas with lots of people, some areas with very few people, whether that's to do with climate, or whether it's to do with jobs, whether it's to do with war, whether it's to do with relief and terrain in terms of living in mountains is a lot harder than living by the coast, for example. Obviously, trading, work, people live near the coasts. That is something that we looked at in this lesson. And then we also looked at our impact on the planet as a result of this exploding population. So obviously the more people there are, the more food we need. The more food we need, the more land that needs clearing for farming. The more people there are, the more homes we need. The more homes we need, the more land needs clearing for homes. The more materials need for homes. And the more people there are, the more fuel that we need. Oil, coal, gas, petrol, electric, firewood, all these things to live our normal lives, to travel, to get us to school, get us to work, to put lights on, to put Wi-Fi on, to charge our phones. This means more trees gone, more deforestation, more land cleared for oil, more gas wells, more coal mines, more power stations, more pollution into the air and the water. There are so many of us that we even compete with each other for the resources that we need. There have already been wars over land and oil, but some people think that there will be very, very soon wars over water, because we need water to survive, so people will do that. Now, we are the cleverest species in terms of the human population. However, the more land we take, the less there is for other animals. And it's estimated now that there's 100,000 species a year are dying out. Even pandas are in danger. The more resources we use, the more phones, the more batteries, the more packaging we use, the more waste we create. This isn't a preach from me, I'm just telling you this is what we learned in the topic. But that waste gets dumped in land, gets dumped in the sea, and it can rot away quite fast, but some will hang around for thousands of years. We also have generated pollution like with our gas emissions, like acid rain and global warming. Now, we will revisit this, but ultimately there is hope, and the idea of sustainability is a very important one. So living in a sustainable way means acting and living in a way that doesn't affect other species and means that future generations can do the same. Now, our population will keep growing to 9 and 10 billion, and recent data tells us that when it gets to about 10.5 billion, it will start to go down just naturally. Now, and the last thing we looked at was Earth's resources like water, soil, wood, metal, and oil, and how we use them, and in good/bad ways as well. And that's the topic of people and the planet. Any questions, come and see me. Otherwise, see you later.